I'm so excited to introduce you to Danielle Gardner, who is the quiet marketing expert. She has come to speak with us about quiet marketing for sensitive entrepreneurs. And so for those of you who have been finding it hard to put yourself out in business, for those of you who have been finding it hard to maintain the energy required to put out offers and to market your offers and to do the work behind the scenes with your clients one-to-one, this is going to be pure gold for you. So I have admired Dani's work for many, many years, and many of her tools I use myself all the time, even though I know some of my marketing doesn't align with how you do things. But what I do is I play with everything and I keep all the things that work for me. And every now and then I'll go out into the world and try something new, and then I'll come back and I'll go, oh, I need to rest back into the quiet marketing ethos again. This is just so nice and beautiful. And so some of your tools, some of my practitioner graduates are well versed with, some things like the digital Sabbath. I've told them about your digital Sabbath and how I practice that. I love that as well. I encourage everybody to have at some point in the week a break from those, input devices that are constantly coming at us and the constant scrolling. So welcome, Dani. I'm really excited for them to learn from you. I know there's been lots of juicy questions come your way, so hopefully we'll get lots of good discussion going today and they'll have all their questions answered. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure. And I thought I'd just sort of insert as well that there's not really any right or wrong way to do quiet marketing, because it's very much just about alignment. And it's really, I see it as a set of principles that each person can apply that principle and get like their own result or what that looks like, So there are certain things that I share in my book that I decided no longer to do. And yes, and what I find sort of humorous, but I can understand it. It's like sometimes people are doing something that is opposite to me and they're sort of like, they're a bit nervous to tell me about it, because it's like, hey, have an opt-in or whatever, and it's like, no, like there's no right or wrong. It's like, if that feels good to you, go for it. Like, just do that thing. And so that's sort of what underpins it all. But the problem often is people are doing stuff that doesn't feel good to them. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Somehow we learn these things, right? We pick them up along the way. We do all these business courses and we just end up doing all of the things. It's like we sort of snowball through and pick it all up in our snowball as we go. And then we're doing everything. And we haven't necessarily chosen intentionally what is aligned with us and what isn't. And one of the things that I love very much about your work is the intentionality of it. Yeah. There is real consideration and there's real intentionality in all of the work that you do. And you really encourage that, tuning into how something feels in your body, which is so aligned with the work that we do as medical executives, tuning into how it feels in your body and working out whether or not it's actually right for you to do that thing. Yeah. When it comes to your business, we think of these things as, following your intuition with life, and but we think there's rules with business, and we have to stick to the rules, which is what we've been taught. You've got to have the freebie opt-in, you've got to have the funnel, you've got to have the email sequence, and you've got to have the low priced offer, then the higher priced offer, and all of the ridiculous rules that we're taught. And I love your approach that is to feel into it and see what's right for you. Would you speak to that? Just
there's a little story that comes to mind that I kept thinking I elaborated on it in the book, and I totally haven't, but I'm actually having the book revised at the moment, and this story is going to be in there, but it feels appropriate for your group. So it's one of the catalyst moments, I guess, that sort of changed my trajectory, if I can get that word out, because in the beginning I was like, what are you doing? That's successful. Great, I'm doing that. What are you doing? Yeah, I can do that. I do that. Like, I remember going to this really expensive retreat or Yeah, it was something like that. And like, just, you know, finding out what each of these successful people did on the stage, and like, right, I'm doing webinars, I'm doing that, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. I actually didn't do most of it, but that's how I was. I was just like, whatever's successful, I'm going to do it, because we want to be doing our purpose, don't we? We want to be successful at that. So, this moment, there were these questions that I was asking myself each morning, and just writing down the answers in my journal notebook. And there was this one particular question, and it was just, how can I bring more joy and ease into my day? Something like that. And I noticed on this particular morning, it just occurred to me that this question was irritating me. And I'm like, why is that? I'm like, yeah, just the last few days and all, and I think it was something because the same answer kept coming up or something. And maybe that's what was irritating. I wasn't paying attention to or I didn't like what I was hearing or something. Anyway, I just thought, that's really interesting. I wonder why this is irritating me. So I remember I hopped up on my bed with the intention of just sort of tuning in for a moment, closing my eyes, tuning in. As soon as my eyes went down, I heard aim lower, and my eyes shot open. I was like, what the fuck was that? Because it sounded like audible, right? And I'm going, what happened? What happened? And then I was like, actually, it kind of sounded a bit like my voice, though. Like, it wasn't some sort of foreign voice. And I was really quite shocked. And then I was like, okay, all right. Good. And I thought I would never say that. Like, I've always been a high achiever. I would never say aim lower, like never. And then I was like, okay, well, what would it look like to aim lower? And as I started to contemplate that, the next amazing thing happened. It's like this flood of energy or something. I felt it pulling into my belly, and it was like a pool of joy. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? What is going on around here? Like, if I was doubting that there was some sort of phenomena that had just happened with the voice, this now visceral thing was like, no, we ain't mucking around here. Something's trying to communicate to me here. And I was like, whoa, that was like, I'm like, okay, I've obviously got to pay attention to this. And from that moment, I just kept going, okay, so what would it look like to aim lower? And I remember at that time choosing to, for example, let go of income goals, because I was, it was like I wanted to make 5,000 a month, didn't get it. 5,000 a month, didn't get it. It was just like, didn't get it. I was living on a prayer, basically. So I swapped that for how could I build community? And how else could I build community? And how else could I build community? It just seemed like something that was more in my control. And then in the next 3 months, I grew quite, like my business started to move quite a bit just from experimenting with this aiming lower. But then the next insight came that it actually wasn't quite aim slower. Although I think that's what I needed. That was the shocking statement that I needed to have to get this thing moving. It was the issue was the pace. The pace at which we expect things to happen is what keeps throwing us out of the game. That leads to disappointment. That leads to So it actually became aim slower, and by truly aiming slower, I was able to achieve way more than I had in the 3 years prior trying to run my business. So, story to kick us off.
I love that. So it actually did shift your business when you aimed lower and aimed slower.
Yep, absolutely.
And the business didn't get slower and lower. It actually, you grew your business. It didn't.
Yep, yeah. And then you see, at the time I was in Facebook groups and doing a lot of just on all the time. So yeah, things really started to move, and I just felt like I just want to make a name for myself. Actually, that's what I wanted to do. But then further down the line, there was a further step of pulling out of Facebook groups, and I thought my business was going to shrivel up and die, and it didn't, for some other reasons that will come out through these questions that we have. So yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. And you know, I first came across you in a large Facebook group.
That's
And
right.
that's the reason that I found you, because it was such a refreshing difference to all of the other things that were going on in that Facebook group. And you know, it's taken me this long. I'm now pulling out of all the Facebook groups. It's
Oh,
taken me
wow.
this long to go,
Yeah.
oh, it's felt wrong for such a long time. Why am I
Yeah.
still doing it? And
Yeah.
I haven't had the same level of intensity of posting all the time like I used to many years ago,
Yeah.
where, you know, you have to post with all the themes and, you know, all of
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even the advice of your Facebook group is such a good example of the intensity of energy required to maintain it, right? That there's, you know, there's spreadsheets that people create of
I
all
did.
these different
Yep.
groups.
I did that. That's the advice I was given. Yep.
Same. With all the themes, and then you look down to the day and you've got to do all of these different posts in all these different groups for the day, and because they're all the themes that you've got to try and capture, and it's just exhausting even thinking about it. I just feel like my energy I just want to shrivel up. Like I don't go into that. You know, although Facebook groups can be really useful and I use them all the time in my courses and I use them in a different way.
Yeah.
Showing up in other people's Facebook groups to try and build my business just doesn't align. And I know that that's the case for so many people in my membership and in my field as well. So I love that you speak to that, because it's huge, right? The fear of, but I've put all this time and effort into voting and building up my following within the group. And
because I did well through Facebook groups, you know. So but you can
you
do
did, and
well other ways. What was that?
Yeah, you can. Right? You're just going to say you built quite a presence within the Facebook groups as well. So it was multiple groups that I saw you in. You'd built quite a presence in those groups through regular posting. So it takes great courage. I have to honor your courage to step out and go, you know what? I'm going to do something different because it doesn't feel right for me. And because my voice, your clairaudient voice, came in and said, do it differently.
Yeah.
Lower, aim slower. I love it.
Yeah. And one thing I'll just add about the whole Facebook thing, one of the things that really, I think, amplified my impact through that, which is one of my first initial steps, is, you know, like you, I was taught you join a number of groups and then you have your spreadsheet and blah, blah, blah. And then I was just like, seriously, like it took me a while though. I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to go. So I went down to the Heart Centre group and I was like, I let go of the others. And I think that's when things really started to, I had a more impact, because it was just like being channeled into one direction. So that can be applied to many things in business and life. But that was something that worked well. And it was like, it was, you know, it was more regulating to just be managing or looking at one group as well. So that could be a little interim step for some people, perhaps.
Yeah, more regulating. That's a really good word for it. It's regulating your nervous system, right?
Yep.
To just have that singular focus. I love that. And especially for those who perhaps have a very small number of Facebook friends, because some people have, you know, either not been on social media and then started to try and build a business by joining social media, or were on it in the past, got rid of their account because they hated it, and then have started a business and gone, oh, I now need to be on social media. And so they've now got, you know, a very small friend group and a very small following. So a Facebook group can be a place to build up that friend group, right? But it's not necessarily what they need to do. And I know that we're going to talk about this more. It's not necessarily the strategy that they have to adopt in order to build sales and revenue within their business. There's so many other ways to do it. Now, Dani has mentioned this book a couple of times. I just want to make sure that I give her a good plug. It's called Quiet Marketing. She is an amazing author. It's such a simple, easy
teeny
book.
weeny book. Yeah.
It's a teeny weeny book, but it's engaging,
it's powerful.
and it's like it's powerful and it's in your voice. I wrote so many notes, but I read it so fast, and I'm a very slow reader. I chew on words in my mind when I'm reading. I like to really digest them and really absorb them. And I read this book really fast. And so I really appreciate that because it means you can do it in a busy life, right?
Yeah. People feel accomplished from reading this book. They're like, I read a book, because we can all buy a book, right? We can all start a book, but they feel like, I get it, I did it. Like I'm winning already. Because you could probably read it in about an hour or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it took me an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because I was stopping and doing all the exercises as I went through.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. So not only did I read the whole book, but I also did the exercises in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I came away having gone, and I made a to-do list of all the things I'm changing.
Oh, amazing.
I checked in with what was right and not right for me right now.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that I've gone, easy. I can change this, change that. And I feel like I've got permission.
Yeah.
So I really loved it. So I highly recommend Dani's book. Where can they find your book?
So I do have a dedicated page on my website. So you basically can get it through Amazon, online bookstores. People can get it through me directly via the workshop I do, the How to Market Quietly and Still Be Successful. I include that as part of that workshop. But otherwise, it's like Kindle. In fact, a lot of people discover me through Kindle because Kindle suggests the book. So little discoverability tip there, which we'll be talking more about discoverability. Yeah.
That's really cool. Oh, I highly recommend it. Definitely grab
Thank
that.
you.
Easy and pleasurable read that is actually something that you can implement straight away. It's quite practical. So it's one of the things that I like about all of your offerings is they are easily digestible, highly practical, and they aren't full of fluff. There's a lot of fluff out there, a lot of time wasting, and with that out, and especially in the business training world, and none of what you do involves any fluff or time wasting. It's very,
and yet it goes deep, right? It's sort of like it's concise, but it goes, and you're like,
it does. And it's like, whoa, now I need to actually do the thing. Okay, I've actually got a whole pile of stuff I need to do here. Like it takes you right in. It's like, right, I can change this. I can do this. All the ideas that land. And like it's quite exciting to do it. But it's very stepwise, which I love too. And it's digestible chunks. Very, very well thought out. So all of your offerings are like that. So I will share your website so that everyone can check out everything that you offer as well. Go and have a fish around on your page and see what they like the look of. And you've got so many amazing blogs too, which we'll talk about too. And no doubt today that will come up. Lots that you can learn just for free on Dani's page too. So now we've got quite a few questions here, which I know are going to be something that resonate with everybody. So thank you to all those who have submitted their questions in advance. We've summarized and condensed them down to being some key questions that I'm going to ask Dani now. So question number one, for those who don't have the energetic capacity for much one-to-one client work, which is of course a really big part of medical intuition training, is they learn how to work one-to-one with clients. I do teach them about group programs and how to adapt some of the skills to work in a group, but the majority of it's one-to-one. So if they don't have the energetic capacity for one-to-one client work or social media visibility, how would you suggest they reshape their business so that it's more sustainable and less training?
Yes. All right. So I formulated my response here after looking at Camilla's website, who asked this question. So it's sort of based around that, but it's really, I guess, the same advice I would give to anyone. So first of all, the first thing that I noticed when I went to her website was, well, before you can do anything really, it's the messaging. Ground zero, it's like there's a few things that could happen here with messaging. And what tends to happen, as someone who started their business with modalities, myself, like I started with kinesiology and then reconnective healing and then Akashic record reading. I spent most of that time leading with my modalities, and I eventually realized that that is not the best way to approach marketing. People, essentially what they're interested in is having their problem solved. They've got something that's concerning them or that they really want or whatever, and it's like that's what they're interested in. So it's really helpful when we can be more upfront about the transformation we can help people with, the problem we can help people solve. And of course, when we look at our modality, we might go, can help everyone with everything, you know, and of course it can. But what I have found is that life has prepared us for being able to help people who are on a similar path to us. That's just sort of how it tends to work. So actually, it doesn't always work like that. There are other exceptions which I can get to, but you know, when I look at a few things I picked up from Camilla's website was that, and her question is, first of all, that she identified as an introvert. I don't think I saw that on her site, but I do remember her saying that. The other thing that I picked up on is her own story of a sudden loss of her child, so grief and loss. So if we even take those two kind of descriptors and led more with that, one is about who she is, but also that's going to bring in, like, honestly, when it comes to any content that I've put out there, the moment I put introvert in or highly sensitive, or, you know, get a little bit more specific and insert that into a title, people discoverability, which is, you know, people being able to find you through intentional searches online, it goes through the roof. So if, following that train of thought, if her page is more focused around like some things that people identify with, or even if in the beginning, because it can be, people can get very nervous about, oh, now you're talking about niching and now I don't want to. So I would say, what, as an experiment, what she could do is she could actually create an offering like that is sort of basically for introverts. And, you know, there's similar terms that people will tend to identify with, which are highly sensitive or maybe neurodivergent, or, you know, there's a few terms out there. But for simplicity, we could just say that she could create something for introverts who are navigating grief and loss type of thing. Do you know what I mean? So she experimented with doing something like that and see how that goes. So messaging is key. Our lived experience is key. The other thing I would say, I was just curious as well. I had a little question mark, and I don't know how you feel about this, Emma, or what you teach, but I did notice on her site that, and this is common in, you know, the online business world, that there was no pricing mentioned, but rather an invitation for a discovery call. And, you know, a lot of people do this. I would say the majority. I wanted to just share that from my own perspective, I never work with someone who doesn't disclose their pricing up front, because you know, we sort of mentioned nervous system regulation before. I think it was before we press record, but to me, that's very nervous system deregulating. I don't want to end up on a call with someone that I don't know what I'm up for. I don't want to be put in that situation. And so I always feel I have an obligation to share this perspective with others, because it's like some people don't consider that. So if there was more of an idea of the pricing, there might be more people actually willing to perhaps book a discovery call. That's my view on it. So I guess step one in this, or point one, to answer this question about reshaping your business so it's more sustainable and less draining, is a bit more refinement of the messaging, and think of it as experimentation. I guess you don't have to go ahead and change everything on your website, but maybe just experiment with some more dialed in offerings to a specific that offer a specific solution. The next thing would be about this topic of discoverability. So actually being found outside of social media and having content assets, I call them, that are working for you even when you're not, to bring people to your door, essentially to your website. So the quickest, most effective channels of discoverability are writing blog articles on your own website, and also YouTube videos. So if you've done the messaging work, then you are going to have a good idea of the topics that you can write about that could potentially help you be found. So that can also, like market research has been a big part of my business. Like I've had an ongoing market research process, and that really helps me just be aware of what they're aware of, because marketing is really about meeting people at their current level of awareness and then taking them on a journey. So when you're really clear on that, then you can create content. So one of the frameworks I have, and I'm not sure, Emma, if you have come across this one, maybe you have, like the message organizing framework. Have you heard of that? Anyway, it really helps you sort of flesh out, where people are at, where they want to go, and then it brings those two things together in what I call thought leadership content. So it's like a way for you to share your perspective on these things that they're experiencing, and that's what you can do through blogs and through videos. And because people are actively looking for this kind of information, that's how you end up being found. So investing more time in discoverability versus the constant hamster wheel of social media is a really great thing to do for a sustainable business. But it is a longer game, like you can't just be discoverable in a month or so. But if you steadily are creating these content assets like blogs and YouTube videos, depending, like you could start to have people finding you in 6 to 8 months, could be more. It does depend on how you write and how you name things and how much guidance you have around that or not. But that's just to give a bit of a timeline. And then the third, so messaging, discoverability, and then the actual offerings. I kind of touched on that a bit, but I noticed with Camilla, and other people probably have this as well, she has a couple of short courses, and hers were like 35 to 40 pounds, something like that. And I did see, as soon as I saw that, I thought, oh, I know, I've got an idea. And then she sort of mentioned this anyway. She was interested in working with like groups of people. So what I would suggest is that those short courses could be what did I put here? Reshaped, or maybe the course doesn't need to be changed at all, but potentially the messaging does. I would say that. But if you could take a group of people through that as a live experience, so maybe they need to watch certain lessons, and then they get together, and there's a live component where you're doing stuff. So if it was something like that, you could take a short course that is like 30 to 40 pounds. And if it's a live experience over like a month or 6 weeks or whatever it is, well, let's just say hypothetically, you've got 10 people, you charge £500, then, that offer can be worth 5,000 each time that you do it. And that's just being very conservative with the numbers. So that's what I would suggest there.
I love that. Yeah. And I think it's a really good use of a course that you've created already, right? Because I know Camilla's courses are amazing, and she's put so much time, effort, wisdom, knowledge, and experience into her courses. And they are really transformative. There's beautiful practices in there. There's all sorts of things that you could do live as well within a group. So they'd be perfect for that. Yeah. And I know there are other practitioners in the group as well who have courses they've created that could easily be live offerings that are worth a lot more than just the course, right?
Yeah.
So when you talk about a content asset, is that a content asset, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I guess it's a paid content asset, but when I talk content assets, it's blogs and YouTube videos. It's stuff that you can be discovered by. So it's ungated, free, content. And the reason why it's an asset is because it's working for you. It's bringing people to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And so if you've got things that people are finding, and I know you mentioned in there the naming of them is so important, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because if people don't, like I've said to so many people along my journey of coaching people around business as well, so many people, I've said nobody Googles how do I get optimum wellness, right? There's so many things you see everywhere, all over the internet, and there's no way in hell I'm going to be up until 2 a.m. going, how do I find optimum wellness? How do I balance my system and my chakras? Like no one's gonna be doing that stuff, and so it needs to be.
What are they typing? They're doing something though. What is it?
They are and what you have can certainly help them, but you need to find what they're typing. And so your market research, is that like a series of questions that you ask people when they come?
So I have had such a
Sorry, I seem to remember you saying you put it on your, instead of your newsletter opt-in, a free newsletter. If they decide to buy a course, then they get this opt-in, but they have to answer questions still even to get onto your list. Is that right? I know I've filled it in at some point in my journey with you. I have no idea.
Okay. So I am a total market research geek, or what I like to call, I think I came up with this term, market research maven. That sounds a bit, but geek, I do like the geek as well. So I've had such a long journey with this, and I've changed my process along the way. I just always remember when I first got taught this, I was given a series of questions, and I just I probably don't use any of those now. I have just worked out what are the most important questions, because I'm really cautious of not giving people too much. Like, I want to get information, but not being too onerous. Yeah, I think that's the word, on them. So so in my journey with this, well, where it's at now is I don't have a freebie, but I had a freebie a long time ago. I had numbers of freebies. Then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And I was like, well, if you want to join my newsletter, you can just join my newsletter. I know, people say people won't join your newsletter. I was like, well, let's just see. But to join the newsletter, they needed to fill out essentially market research questions, right? So it felt a bit cheeky. But I'm like, well, people did it. And I thought, well, if they can't be bothered, that's fine. They're just not ready for me. We're just not, do you know what I mean? So it's a lot of what's threaded through everything is mindfulness. Like, I'm not going to make it a no-brainer for you. For anyone, I'm going to make it a brainer,
I love that. Make it a brainer.
Yeah.
Because everyone says make it a no-brainer.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
make it a brainer.
So then eventually another story, but there was an irritation, and I have a chapter in my book about the wisdom of irritation. So there is a lot of wisdom if you can listen to it in irritation. I was a bit irritated with this way of doing it. And I'm like, it kept coming up, and I kept positive self-talking myself, like, Dani, don't worry about that, whatever. And I kept sweeping it under the carpet, but this irritation kept coming back and coming back. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I'm just getting rid of it. You can't sign up. The only way you can receive my newsletter is if you're a client or a student. So then I replaced the option to fill in those questions with, just essentially you can buy a course or a workshop or whatever. Most recently though, and this is only like in the last month or so, there is like a little loophole where I have got a waiting list for 2 programs, and to join that waiting list, guess what? There's the same market research questions. So at every turn, when you're like, when people have bought a few things from me, like at everything, there's the same questions, basically. It's hilarious. But people do it. The people do it multiple times. So yeah, so to join the wait list for these programs, it's those market research questions. And I actually say, because we do need to be mindful of the GDPR rules and that kind of thing, it says, when you join this wait list, you're, signing up for updates, whatever, basically you're going to, I think I say you're joining my email community or something like that. So people are very aware and they consent to it and they're like, yeah. So the thing is, for me, if they fill in that market research, honestly, that is like €100 to me. So that's as good as having purchased something, So I have this constant thing now. And then on occasion, I have sent out to my, newsletter list that I'm whatever, there's been like a special edition market research thing for a specific thing or, so that's been really good as well.
That's so good. It's so inspiring because, there's such a belief that market research is really dry and boring, right? And then it's like, oh, I have to do market research and do a call out to everybody and try and get people in to answer my questions and then give them free time from me to pay them for the time. But, actually, it doesn't have to be that big and like you say, onerous. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It can just be like a type form or something, right? It can just be something little.
I've made market research sexy, I think, because I've had a few training or a few programs this year, and the way it's worked out now, which people are so excited about, is you basically come up with a workshop, a class that is, that you already know that people are interested in. You put a price on that. You say, hey, I got this workshop. This is the price. Or if you want to come for free, just fill in this market research question. And it's, so there's no sort of one-on-one kind of got to catch up with everyone. And it's a really good way to sort of test an idea for like a workshop or something as well. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's really good. And it's, there's an incentive, right?
Yeah.
They want to get it free so they can.
Yeah.
It's
like if they can be bothered filling out a market research, that means that they could probably be bothered paying for it as well, like paying for the class.
Right. Yeah. I hadn't made that connection. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if they couldn't, they just, it's like, well, whatever. So it's fine.
Yeah. And that tells you that the idea is not going to be a successful course, right? Not as it stands.
Yeah. Might need some tweaking or got the wrong audience or, whatever. It could say a lot of things, but.
Yeah. Often it's the idea is often okay. It's our way of communicating it that can be completely wrong.
Yeah. So
like the optimum wellness thing.
Yeah.
We could be thinking we know what people want, but if we're not speaking to what they want in the offer, then no one's going to buy it because they don't know it's for them.
Yeah. And there's this sort of phrase I've come up with just recently because I'm reviving my Create a Tiny Course curriculum, and it's this idea of what you want to teach versus the solution you can help people with, or something like that. There's a way of phrasing it. It's like, yeah, because what happens is people enter these sort of, whether it's a workshop or a course or whatever, it's like, I want to teach this, and it's not it's just teaching information, not necessarily a solution. Whereas you could still teach the same topic, so to speak, but positioned to solve an actual problem or create a transformation.
Yes. Yeah. And then you're going to get a lot more people in because
then people can justify buying, and yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. I love that distinction between what you want to teach and what people want to buy.
Yeah.
It's a big distinction, and I think we often all get it wrong. I know I play with things and then go, oh, it's interesting, I've got no interest in this, but my messaging around it is completely off, and I've been focusing on what I want to share with everybody, which is what we get excited about. But it's a different slant, and when we take that pause, that step back, take a deep breath and relook at it from the buyer's perspective, that can change everything. Kind of.
Yeah,
that's so good. So good. Thank you. And so another question we've had is, how many hours a week would you say is a reasonable time to invest into your marketing?
Yeah, and so this very much depends on what type of marketing. My little note for here is social media, lots. That's how much you need to invest, lots and lots. That's my basic answer. If you're looking at discoverability and this idea of content assets, then I started to think, okay, I mean, look, I'm a little bit sporadic in my own creation of things. It's like I can like create 2 or 3 blogs like all of a sudden and then nothing for a while. But I think even I would like to get into more of a rhythm if it's, you know, if it ends up being aligned, where I create, you know, at least maybe 1 content asset a week. So then if you look at, well, how long does it take to create a content asset? And that could be different for everyone. But I would say at least 2 hours. So if I think about creating a blog article, what I might do is in one 1 hour session, I might draft it out and sort of work out the nuts and bolts of it and whatever. And then I like to give things a few days to like space for the whole thing to percolate. Then I can go back and go, and it's easier to finish off. So, you know, I would say roughly 2 hours if it was something like that. Video for me probably takes a little bit shorter because I'm not big on editing. I aim to just kind of go record, even if you can see my arm come out and press record, like I don't even care. So I wouldn't edit that out necessarily. And, you know, so my ideal situation is I press record, I look into the camera and I start talking to go blah, 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 and then whatever, and I press stop. And then before I get up to go and make a tea, I go and upload it to YouTube. I mean, that's how quick, you know, it could be.
No editing, no reviewing.
Oh.
No trimming.
I guess sometimes I know that I've nailed it, but maybe I do review it. No, but I reckon there's probably been times that I've just gone, no, I nailed it. So, and who knows, maybe those need to be reviewed. I don't know. But
I love the confidence, and they're not actually caring that it's imperfect.
Yeah, I mean,
serious balls.
Yeah,
I love
look,
it.
like most of us.
I'm not worthy of your balls.
Yeah, okay.
I love it.
Like most of us, I am a bit of a perfectionist, but I tell you what, one thing that I realize is the more perfect I am, the less approachable I
am. Yep.
So if people see me not get it totally right, it's very permission giving. It's very like, oh, if Dani can do that, so can I. And nothing like spoke that more to me than this one time. Do you know Tad Hargrave, Marketing for Hippies? Yeah. So I love Tad. And watching one of his videos, and if you've ever watched his videos, he's always out in the street a lot of the time, or in his house or whatever, but a lot of the time he's out on the street talking. And I'm watching his video and he starts talking and a garbage truck pulls up behind him, right? And he's doing the garbage truck thing. And this is Tad. Oh yeah, it's a garbage truck, right? And keeps talking. And I am just like pissing myself laughing because I'm picturing myself in that scenario. I'm picturing me having a little hissy fit, but I'm going to have to start again and garbage truck, you know, all of that. And all I could think of is, oh my God, if a garbage truck can pull up behind Tad Hargrave, he can look at it and go, oh, it's just a garbage truck and keep going. I can do anything.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. And that, you know, because we can waste so much time with over reviewing, feeling like it wasn't right. It's one of the reasons I like running things live in a lot of ways, because I just get over myself. My perfectionist can't get in the way. I say all kinds of terrible, radical things. I get my foot in my mouth. stuff comes out so wrong, and that's fine. Like it actually makes no difference to what I'm teaching and what we're doing in the moment. Even in meditations, you can stumble through your words and people can still have an epic experience at the other end of it, right? It can still, because energy of what you're sharing, it's not the precision of what you share. We're not doing, YouTube surgery, right? It's the precision doesn't need to be there because it makes us less human. I completely agree with that, and I think that's given me a bit of a kick up the butt as well. That the more perfect and precise it is, the less approachable it is. So I appreciate you saying that. That's like, oh yeah, there you go, Emma, slap upside the head. Remember that.
Well, my latest little kind of trying to be perfect thing though, and I snapped out of it. And this wasn't even for public consumption, actually. It was just a recording for one of my groups. I was just zeroing in on the amount of times I said and it just felt like this, that, this, that, and it was doing my head in. And I spent a freaking hour editing out from about 10 minutes of, it could have even been 5, of a video. And I'm like, I knew this was not a good use of my time. And I'm like, this is insane, Dani. But then after that, I was listening to some other people, and it's almost like, maybe it was like a little angel that dropped, on my shoulder going, are you noticing how many times they say, this person I'm watching say, and I hadn't. But once I started listening, I could hear them, and it made no difference, And it really, that was sort of like a little sign for me to like, see, you're worrying about this thing, and you've sat here and this person's been saying, you haven't even noticed. And you think, you don't think any less of them. Because I think that's the thing, that's the judgment I had in it. Like, if I'm saying, I don't quite know, I'm a little bit uncertain of myself or something. That's, so yeah, we've all got to get over it. I'm still a work in progress, Emma.
But that's the thing. It's okay to be a work in progress, I think, and put yourself out there. I recently went through one of your tiny courses, which I loved, by the way. And because I'm going to point it out now. And I loved it because I think you even mentioned it in there, that it's okay to video yourself and make mistakes in your words. You don't have to re-record things. It doesn't matter if you stumbled over and repeated yourself. It's okay. And then you actually did it in that video just towards the end of the video. And I'm like, you know what? If you hadn't even mentioned that, I wouldn't have even noticed you having done that. It would have been totally normal. But because you mentioned it, I was like, oh, I can see it. And I can see it makes no difference. It was like the perfect lesson in that short video of how, and it was totally natural. You didn't do it deliberately. It was a completely natural, just sort of a couple of words just sort of missaid, as we do because we're human. And it made no difference. Like if I wouldn't have even registered it. And I think, all those times I've edited stuff or erased something and re-recorded it because I stumbled over a word. And I think no one would have even noticed it. And it was me that heard it when I went back through it or heard myself say it. I thought it was wrong, but no one else would have noticed.
Others would just think it was endearing,
Yes, endearing.
Something that else has happened when I'm like recording those lessons or whatever it is for a workshop or anything that's pre-recorded. If it's happened live, I guess it's the same. But like I'll realize in the moment that there's an issue with the slide, like something's been spelt wrong.
You misspell. I hate that. When I realize while I'm talking about it that my slide is wrong.
I mean, when it's live, you're just live, so there's nothing you do. But when it's like for a pre-recorded tiny lesson, like I think maybe initially I did start again, but honestly, if I'm 8 minutes into the lesson and it's probably going to end soon and I freaking nailed it, and now I spot a thing, no, I do tend to mention it though, because I sort of think like I want people to be aware that I can see that error.
You own it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I love that.
But I just leave it there now. I'm just like, oh well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's okay. And
Yeah,
a lot of people don't create their own slides for things. You can have assistants that make things for you.
yeah,
So, and sometimes that creates the errors anyway, because they're not, either English isn't a first language,
yeah,
or they don't really know what it is you're trying to say, because it's
yeah,
a different their field, right? So
yeah,
easily make, misspells, errors, all sorts of things on there because they've misinterpreted the information when they've put it on the slide. So, and it's okay. It doesn't, and it means that, you can always provide the altered slide as a PDF or something, right? It can be part
yeah,
of
of
when you put out the
course.
slide, it can be
Yeah,
edited so it's correct. It's all right if the video is not quite right. I love that.
yeah,
Yeah. It takes the pressure off, I think. And so if it's 2 hours or so a week, at least 2 hours a week to create a content asset, I think creating one content asset a week feels like that feels amazing. Like I love
yeah,
I love that, because it feels like you're really growing things that
yeah,
are making you more discoverable to your right people.
yeah.
Um, when it comes to, for instance, putting yourself out on social media, because you're on social media, I watch you on Instagram. Do you do much on Facebook now?
Oh, I just sort of share things usually, like when I'm posting to Instagram, it'll share to Facebook. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't,
So
Facebook doesn't show me the people I follow. It shows me lots of things I don't follow. I don't know why.
yeah, yeah,
Something's wrong with the Facebook feed these days.
yeah,
And so I see you on Instagram because that seems to still show me people I follow and interact with. So it seems like you're on there most days. I don't know if that's true, but I'm curious about that. How much time do you spend posting?
yeah, yeah. So I consider myself in a unique situation in terms of I don't need to be there. So like I can go for a week without saying anything. And
Mhm.
then I might have a couple of things to say in a row, you know. So like for most people need to be there, right? So it's a different scenario for me. So I guess my approach is for myself, because like 85% of people are finding me through intentional search or through referrals, through people mentioning me. Well, actually, and when I say 85% of finding me, it's not all intentional search. Some of it's what I call suggestibility, which is things like Kindle, YouTube. There's a few double ups. So it's either discoverability or suggestibility. So that means that Instagram for me is my play place. It doesn't need to perform for me. However, I'm very well aware that when people do find me, a website is a static place. It's like, I know I have a nice website. I love that. But then I notice this in myself. It's like you go, what are they doing now though? Like right now. And so this is where I see that social media does play a role to sort of give people a bit of a view of what's going on now and to, that kind of thing. So I don't have any rhyme or rhythm to when I post. If there's if there's something I want to say or a photo I have that I've taken that I'm like, I just want to share that, so I need to find some words to go with it. Also, when I do have something coming up like a workshop, I'm like, oh yeah, I should say something at least once, like Instagram. So that's sort of the way I approach it. For someone who is relying on it, I mean, my response was lots. Gosh, who knows? I would imagine if I was to take a stab at it, like, okay, if I look back to my Facebook group days, I would say I was spending at least 3 hours a day, whether it be scrolling, posting, comment, like at least. What do you, when you were at, your prime, Emma, how many hours do you think you were
Hey, you saying I'm past my prime?
in Facebook groups?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Facebook groups, I agree. I reckon it was probably maybe 4 hours sometimes
Yeah,
to
it
just
could be.
get to all the different groups, create the content, share it in all the right places. I was doing live videos on my page. I was then going live in different groups. And because it was multiple groups,
Yeah.
and back then I didn't have any handle on Instagram, and I, in both definitions of that, I didn't have an Instagram handle and I had no handle on Instagram.
Yeah.
And no stories at that point either. So it was just business page and profile, and groups. And so I was trying to post in those 3 places, and I was very shy on my personal profile initially, and didn't really talk about my work there. And now my only reason for being on social media is my work. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be on social media, right? I'd be out doing other stuff. So everything, there's no point me just going on there to post, there to just post personal stuff and scroll other people's things. I'm there for a purpose now. And I'm not there to build other people's communities, which is what I spent so much of my time doing back in that day, was building other people's communities, not my own. And it took up a large chunk of the day. So I would be seeing a lot of clients, but then I would be promoting to try and get clients in, and promoting in every different way that I could, and trying to meet all of the theme days in those groups as well, so that I could then promote and be, allowed to promote on those promotion days.
Yes, exactly.
Exhausting. It was exhausting. And now I feel like I am in a lot more places a lot more frequently without spending anywhere near as much time, because I'm doing it differently, and I've pulled my energy back out of the places that were just an energy suck. It's made such a difference. But I guess it depends on where you are in your business. If you're at the very beginning of your business and you're trying to build up a reputation and a following, it's hard to do that without an audience. And if you don't have one, you kind of want to borrow someone else's, right, to be able to build that up. But I love the concept of creating content assets, as you call them, that are going to call people in from various ways. And so things like search engine optimization on your website sounds big and scary, is not so hard. And I do share some tutorials with people within the professional membership as well, to show them I only know the basics. You probably know a lot about it than I do.
It's all you need. Like, I didn't know much about SEO when I became discoverable. It's only that I, reverse engineered things, and I've learned a few things along the way. But SEO can be made out to be such a complex topic that you got to pay a lot of money for people to do. I had a client saying to me once, "Oh yeah, like someone's done my SEO, it's all sorted, I'm all over it." And I'm like, "Oh, great. So which page on your website gets the most traffic?" And she's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So do you know what your main keywords are?" Like, so she didn't actually know anything herself, and I think that's important, because understanding some of these things for myself has actually led to offerings. Because if all these people are coming to this particular blog and then there's nowhere else to go, why don't I create somewhere to go? So you can, whatever your teaching is probably just really enough to get started. Like we already talked about, the naming of either the blog or the offer or the wallet, the naming of stuff, I think that's really key. And it's essentially got to be clear rather than clever.
Yeah, you're right. Clear rather than clever. We try and get all clever with our naming of things.
Yeah.
And actually, it doesn't matter if it rhymes or it just needs to say what it does on the box. Like,
I mean, if it rhymes, it's a bonus, but
it's alliteration, great.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be the focus, right? The focus needs to be that it's clear. You're saying is.
The other thing I thought, just on that whole, how, social media and how long, I had this quick thought, okay, let's just say I wasn't discoverable. Let's just say I was starting from scratch. How would I approach it? Well, what I notice, and it's sort of obvious to even say this, that what goes well is like can be put under the banner of public journaling. So whenever I share my thought process, my, my perspective on something, my journey with something, these are the posts that people want to engage with. And I've also known over time that there doesn't even need to be a call to action for someone to read something and go really resonate, and on their own accord, would you believe, go to your website and see what you offer, because they're so taken by what you're saying. Whereas what a lot of people do is they just, here's my offer, here's a man, here, sign up for the thing, and and here's another ad, and here's another ad, and then they're like, no one's engaging. It's like, yeah. Like, no wonder. So I would, if I was starting again and I was trying to build up, I would probably, well, if I think about Instagram, maybe I'll try and suss out a couple of, good hashtags that I could start using that would help me, because, you can get a little bit of discoverability, I guess, out of Instagram. And I would do like a public journaling type of scenario. I would be really aware of the things that people face. I would be open to talking about things on the outskirts of, like some people are just like, if it's not something I offer, if it's not this, like I can't talk about that thing because otherwise I've got to change my brand and my name and And I'm like, I'll talk about anything. Like often when people get stuck on this, I'll say, how often do you hear me talking about quiet marketing? Directly.
I reckon it's like 1 in every 5 posts or so, maybe. Am I about right?
I hardly ever talk about it directly. I'm just sharing my experience. Like when I speak about it directly, it's like, yeah, I've got this workshop, how to market quietly and still be successful, But I'll talk about all sorts of things. I have no concern that it's like not on brand, or, I am the brand. So how can it not be on brand?
Writing that down. I am the brand. So how can it not be on brand?
Yeah. And I am diverse. I am, yeah. But, there's a Dani thread through everything, because of how I think and that kind of stuff. So
exactly, because you approach life in the same way as you approach business, and your life comes through so beautifully, and it doesn't distract at all from your mission and what you actually, you're
it adds, doesn't it?
It adds to it, yeah.
Because people love that. They love just to hear and to see, and it's, might be what they want for themselves, like all this sort of stuff. So
yeah. And so for those who are watching and listening, Dani shares lots about her travels. She lives in Spain, is that right?
Yeah.
And you've got a beautiful longhouse that you're renovating as well, which I love. I love it when you share with your chickens and your longhouse and all the renovation. That just like speaks to my soul. It's like that's exactly I just exhale when I come to your Instagram posts, and your photos are so beautiful. And it's just such a, and it is on brand because it's simple, it's calm, it's quiet, it's beautiful, and it's elegant. There's so much of it that's in alignment with your brand, and yet you share it as your, marketing, if you want to call it marketing.
Well, and this is a good time to insert this idea of marketing is making art. Or make art in. And this is an idea that I got off Alexandra Franzen. Some people may have heard of her. I came across her, I think it was back in 2017, because she had written a blog on how she had gone off all social media, deleted her accounts, and I just remember my jaw dropping, going, what? And she was still in business. So that really struck a chord with me. And yeah, so anyway, one of her newsletters one day talked about marketing sounds like make arting, and how it's about making art. I'm like, yes, like, and that's really the approach that I use. I'm making it beautiful for me. I am the main audience member, like if I can be lit up by it, I know that others probably will be too, so I don't get, a lot of people struggle with this, probably your people might as well. They want to say something, but it's like they get stuck in, oh, but this and what that should be, it's all this sort of questioning about how it be received. And because I'm doing it for me, first and foremost, the only person who I'm worried about is how I'm receiving it. How am I receiving my own marketing? Is it lighting me up? Do I feel good about it? And if I feel good about it, and I've got the art is in the imagery, in the words, and everything, then it's going out. And like, sure, I'd love people to love it as well, but if I love it, that's the main thing,
I love that. And because then it becomes an enjoyable experience, right?
Right?
So you can be on social media and
Who
enjoy.
knew?
That's right. That's exactly right. I love that.
I mean, there's like this unwritten law that it should not be enjoyable,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to jump down to one of these questions that I remember being asked, which was, what do you find is the biggest hurdle in promoting yourself? And well, I guess, okay, I'm picking up the nuance there and promoting yourself, but in terms of marketing, there is no hurdle because it's make arting, like I'm making art. But then I'm like, no, come on, is there a hurdle? Is there a hurdle? And I'm like, well, the main thing I would say is time. Like sometimes I want to post something, but I'm so immersed in a creation of a content asset or an actual thing, offering like a tiny course or something like that, that I'm so immersed, and it's like all that has to wait. So that's one thing. But the other thing, when I think about this nuance, the biggest hurdle promoting yourself, something that I've noticed happens to me and others, like let's say you have an offer, right? And you have said nothing about it. And now all of a sudden, there's a few days away from it, closing or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
because now it's like,
say
it's not art. It's no longer art, right?
Yeah.
There's this big agenda behind it, and you feel awkward. You don't want to feel salesy. So yeah, that's a problem. But how do you, the solution is what I call the golden hour of marketing. I don't know if you ever saw this post. It was from a few months ago. I was like, oh, this is great. This is a work of art, this little post I made. And I talked about how the golden hour of marketing is when there is nothing to buy. There is no link. You can't take any action, right? So let's say you're working on an offering and you're inspired by it, right? You're like, oh, I love this bit. I love this message. Like you share in that golden hour just through your own inspiration, a piece of what you're working on. You can say you're working on it, So what I find is people don't take advantage of this, what's called the golden hour. Then they wait to say anything. Now, card open, right? And now it's like, pressure cooker. Everything I say now on is pressure cooker, right? Whereas when you're in the golden hour, there's so much freedom. You can say whatever you want. No one can take any action. And I find freedom in that. So the golden hour is really, you could say it's all the time. But this is where people end up having this mindset that if they're not selling anything, then they're not being they're not marketing, I remember I was saying to a client earlier this year, so I know that she doesn't like social media, but I was saying, so, oh no, that's right. She was telling me something in a session. I'm like, oh my God, have you said that publicly? Like, I'm thinking, this is amazing. And she's like, oh no, because like I'm fully booked and blah, 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 talking about how she's fully booked. She's been fully booked for a while. And I'm like, okay. So have you shared that thing publicly? Like, I'm going back to the original question, like what has you being fully booked got to do with you sharing this amazing message?
Yeah.
And so in her mind, you just don't say anything unless you need some clients.
Yeah, that used to be me. 100% that used to be me. And I would disappear every time I was fully booked because I was afraid of people reaching out and me even saying there's no time slots for you. Because I got to a point where I had a wait list of 6 months for people to book me because I was so overbooked. I was just undercharging services, right? And I only had a limited number of hours in the week that I could do the deep work that I was doing. And so I just kind of just withdrew. I stopped talking about the work I did. I stopped talking about how excited I was and the shifts people were getting. I stopped talking about, and then when I needed more people, I would come back out, right? But then it would take ages to build it all up again because it was like starting from scratch. My algorithms were obviously all down, but at that point I didn't really know about algorithms, and it was just like having to go from ground zero again, all over again, every time I withdrew because I felt too busy. And I've done it also with courses along the way. I launch a course. Yes, I'm out in the world, launching the course. Okay, course starts. And I disappear from social media because I'm in the back running the course.
Yeah.
But then the usual bookings and things all stop because it's like I don't exist anymore, right? I'm behind. I've pulled right back. And so I, have gone through those phases as well of not sharing the big transformations people were getting with me when they happen, when it's exciting and it's like that energy is all around it. I shared one today that was an amazing session, literally today with a one-to-one. And it feels so good to share it when I'm like, oh my God, it's so amazing in that energy, because it means so much more. And you can sense, sensitive people sense the energy of the post at the other end as well, right? We're sensitive to the energy that it was written in.
And there's no agenda there other than I just want to share this message, Yeah.
And see what's possible. And I just want to share my energy. I want to share this. I want to, to share the message. And I think there's something in that for everybody that is going to watch this, because I think so much we think we want to earn money from our business. We want to build our business. We want to serve people. We want to help people. And we can't do that without people knowing who we are and coming to us and booking in with us and for us working with them. But so much of it ends up being like work to share that message. When you do things like share your energy in the golden hour of creation, or share your energy around a transformation that you've had with a client, or a big shift that somebody's had, or just how you do your process, like you were saying, just sharing your process, that makes a difference, I think. Because there's no pressure. All the pressure is gone. Much more fun to share. And I think we can forget that so easily. I know I do. I know I forget that really easily. I have to be reminded. So I appreciate that reminder. Thank you.
Yeah. So how about there's probably some we may have answered some of these remaining questions already. Let's have a quick look. So the next one was, what if you shy away from technology? What other ways would you promote yourself? Yeah. And with that question, I was thinking, okay, it depends what you mean by technology. I don't know whether that was used as maybe also like social media. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you know, but if you don't want to do any technology like at all, then really you've got to look local. You've got to go to events. Something that I have done a few times in my journey is use, if it still exists, meetup.com. I would start a meetup group, but I guess you could equally do this on Facebook. So I so one of the things I did was, okay, first one I did was I did a French group, a French interest group, right? Because I just wanted to go and live in France. And I was like, how do I bring France to me? You know, so that whole kind of, I guess, manifestation type of deal. Like, how do I, you know, bring it into my life now? And it was like, oh, well, I'd go and eat in French restaurants, have coffee in French cafes, go and watch French movies. And I went, oh, I'm starting a French group. So that's what I did. But interestingly, I had one of my first clients when I was doing the Akashic record reading through that. She just sort of found that led to her wanting to know more about me. She found my website. So, you know, things can happen like that. But then I started a secondary group called Cheeky Weekday Lunches, because I was taking myself out on a lunch date during the week. And I ended up going, oh, I reckon there's other self-employed, you know, women like me that might like to, you know, do this sort of thing. So it was like basically tables of 8. It was a maximum of 8 people. And yeah, I was just doing that like once a month. And some of those women were some of my first market research participants as well. So, you know, there's things like that. But otherwise, if who asked this question means social media, like apart from social media, then, you know, what we've already talked about, discoverability is good. Good to, if you want to be discoverable, have a website, have a section called a blog. I know a lot of people have been taught that you don't need a website, you know, the last few years or so. And I would say that's absolutely true if you want to rely on social media. If you don't, if you want to get your life back, you get a website. And I know someone really good. Actually, let me mention
if you have
her.
if you have a tendency of being banned on social media, then it's
Oh,
also
right.
good to have a website.
Yes, right. There's that.
You say controversial things that get you
Yeah.
banned on social media, like, you know,
Yeah.
you should be allowed to choose what you put in your body,
Yeah,
then
right.
you can get banned,
Yes.
and then you
Yes.
can't use any of your social media platforms. So having a website is a great backup. I highly recommend it as just for
Yeah.
that. But yeah, sorry, you were going to say something about someone who could
Oh,
design.
yeah. So the Alana Jade Studio does mine. So alanajadestudio.com. Just give her a little plug because she's amazing. What else do we have here? Is there a percentage of your sales that you would aim towards marketing budget? I don't. I'm thinking I'm kind of not even that organized to think like that. So good on you for asking that question, whoever that was. I actually
Let's
did
do
look. I did look into it though, and it's anywhere between 2 and 10% of revenue. I guess in my case, because people are finding me organically so much, I'm not putting money towards that. But on occasion, what I'll do is put money behind promoting my content, and with the view to like reaching more people, like as a distribution of content. So I'll do that rather than trying to promote an offer. I think it feels way better. I think it's more powerful to promote content so that people get to experience you through your content. And so when I've done that, you know, I might say, oh, I'll like $50 for the week or $10 a day. You know, I'll just put that cap on it and see how it goes. So that's basically my approach to that.
And
What
so
else have we
you
got
don't,
here? Yeah.
so you don't have right now, are you doing, is it all organic marketing that you do, or have you got paid marketing? It's just all organic now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so is mine. It's all organic as well.
Yeah.
I've had times where I've played with Facebook ads, but I don't do any promoting of anything, you know, paid promotions now.
Yeah. Earlier in the year, I was working with a Facebook ads consultant, and I just wanted to sort of organize things a bit more, and so that when I did want to distribute stuff, I could. So she was running some ads putting ads behind content for a bit. But yeah, that nothing's really happening for the last 6 months in terms of that.
Yeah.
What else we got?
How do you start putting yourself out there on the internet when you don't want to start with your own friends and family on your personal Facebook?
Become discoverable.
Yeah, I like that, because then it's not putting yourself in front of the people you already know. You're finding people, well, people are finding you as opposed to you finding them. They're finding you through your.
I mean, I think the worst thing people can do is invite family and friends to join, to whatever, follow their Facebook page. That's real bad news. I've never used my personal page for business. I mean, sure, maybe there's been the odd time I've posted or reposted something, but I just don't use that as a strategy. So if you're right at the beginning and the idea of Facebook groups isn't a total turn off for you, like you could actually kind of just start there. Like it can be good to just get in the game, I guess, and to practice, your messaging and things like that. But I would say do that, but be creating content assets, like work on your message, create those content assets so that you can be building your discoverability. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There is some safety in Facebook groups, right?
Yeah.
So friends and family generally aren't in there, and no one else can see if it's got private settings.
Yeah.
No one else can post. So there is some safety, and you can play in there with some things. It does give you the opportunity to play with putting out things that are deeply uncomfortable in front of the people you went to primary school with.
Yeah.
Because they're not in there generally.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might discover one's in there and suddenly cringe, but it does give you that. But it does have a cost. There is an energy cost and a time cost. And faceless marketing, I'm not sure if that means faceless in front of your friends and family, or if you mean faceless as in just marketing your offers.
Yeah. The faceless marketing is a thing. I don't know if you've come across it. It's basically where people are showing like their body, but not their face.
Oh,
so it's
no,
like, yeah. So it's like, so I've only seen one account that does this, and mind you, this person sells a course on faceless marketing.
Oh,
so they're doing faceless marketing, but they're selling a course on faceless marketing. Now, it's very chic. It looks very like you have these images of. I've seen a lot of video footage, and it's like from the back of the person. I don't know. There's all this footage, but you don't see their face, right? It looks very chic. I can see how appealing it would be to a lot of people who don't want to show their face. I find it's interesting. I think what I like about it is it's, I guess, what's the word? It's going against the grain. All right. And so that sort of fascinates me. But I guess what I can't help thinking, especially in terms of this account looks like it's doing really well. But we've got to remember it's an account teaching people how to selling a course on faceless marketing. It's like a coach who says, here I am rolling in money, and I've got a course for you that can teach you how to roll in money.
Yeah, I just get a million people to pay me $1 to learn how to earn $1 million, right? How to make $1 million. Yeah.
So I haven't seen anyone, be super successful apart with the faceless marketing, apart from this person who's selling the course on it. So, I think like with most things, if it's appealing, if it's fascinating in some way, try it on, see how you go. I think on the other side of the coin, I always bring everything back to my own experience, right? And strangely, I don't think a lot of people do this, because I once said, market unto others as you would have them market unto you. And I did that as a post.
I love that. Yeah.
And people were like, it felt like their jaws were dropping. And like, they're kind of going, I never really thought of that. And I'm doing things that I don't like. And I'm like, really? You never thought of that? Anyway. Anyway, going back to my own experience. When I want to work with someone, if I can't see their face, it's a no. So there's that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah,
try it on,
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I did come across recently, even though I didn't know it was a thing. I came across recently on Instagram, and I actually followed her, a woman who teaches, because I follow random crap on Instagram. There's stuff that I go down these tunnels, and I have these little folders of all these things that I like. How to do shuffling steps. You know that every day I'm shuffling, like shuffle steps, like
Oh,
dance
right.
moves,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's not like
Yeah, I've seen
exercise, but it's
that.
a
It
little
does
bit
look
like
cool.
yeah, it's cool, right? It's like the
Yeah.
modern version of the Running Man. So like, it works for our era. So, but that she always wears a hooded jumper and a black mask. And every single one of her videos, she just shows you the shuffling steps, and you see her, and she's really identifiable because she's got a black mask and a black hoodie. But I have no idea what she looks like. And so it could be
Yeah.
any in the black mask and the black hoodie,
Yeah.
and I could follow somebody else's site without even knowing, because I don't remember the name and I don't remember the handle, but I do see her pop
Yeah.
up on the feed. But it could honestly be anyone that pops up looking the same, and I wouldn't know the difference. And so
Yeah.
because of that, I think, well, it doesn't affect whether or not I'll follow her, but
Yeah.
it does affect whether or not I'll identify her in future.
Yeah.
When she shows or offers something else, I might not know it's the same person.
Yeah.
But I get it. I get that
Yeah.
wanting to this
But
aspect, but it's
and I'm thinking, imagining me watching, like, if I was drawn to someone like that, and like, yeah, I like her moves, and she brought out a whatever, a work something. I don't know, maybe with something like that, it's not so important to see the face because I'm not, like getting personal with them,
yeah.
So maybe in some markets, it can work like that.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is, if what you do once you get a client in is to have a face-to-face call, if you're going to be showing your face at some point, it seems silly to have faceless marketing at the front, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
They won't know you when they get
Yeah.
on that call.
Yeah.
Whereas people who get on calls with me feel like they know me from social
Yeah.
media. I have people come up to me at concerts, thousands of people watching Fatboy Slim all dancing together. Some random person came up going, "Oh my God, you're Emma Turton from the internet."
Oh,
Huge
wow.
hug. It's like, oh my God, how did I end up
Wow.
famous?
That's
People come give me a huge hug. She's like, "Oh my God, I don't even know you. I've just given you a big hug." I said, "No, that's awesome. Thank you." It's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
But she felt like she knew me, to have
yeah,
that. At once at an airport, someone came running up and said they knew me, and it was so good because I show
yeah,
my face.
yeah,
And I'm an introvert, that,
yeah,
like, I don't mind one person coming up to me, but a whole pile of people all
yeah,
coming at me at once might be a bit much.
yeah,
But I still love that because it's really personal. And now I've seen their face, I now know them too, right?
yeah. It's interesting
So
because as an introvert myself, showing my face has never been an issue, really.
yeah,
Um, I don't know whether it was like really in the early days. But the other thing I was just thinking is sometimes people, you get these accounts where every single photo is of the person, right? So there is middle ground here. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, even in my own Instagram gallery, it's like, maybe 1 out of 10 pictures is me or
yeah.
something, so it's not like I don't feel the need to like blast my face everywhere. Like I find it more interesting to, yeah, like throw in some, well, actually my hand appears as well in things and my legs. Yeah, so I guess there's that, but that's faceless.
Yeah. And I know that, I hope you don't mind me mentioning, I know that you've done some work with Paula Ivy as well with the self-biography. I have too. And
Yeah,
I love that, your hand can be really identifiable. If you've got, like,
yeah,
she has tattoos, I have
yeah,
rings that I wear, your earrings can be in things, or,
yeah,
the clothing that you're wearing can be quite identifiable as you.
yeah,
That's, or your glasses sitting beside a hat can be,
yeah.
recognize them. And so there's other ways to show yourself, right?
Yeah, and you
Um,
can get creative. Like that feels creative, doesn't it? To show parts of you that aren't always visible just through your face, like your interests and yeah.
Right. That's exactly right. So yeah, there's other ways to show yourself without having to always show your face, if that's what feels confronting.
Yeah.
And I think that flows into that next question of how to start marketing yourself when you're afraid to be visible as well.
Yeah. The few notes I made about that is I was just curious as to why is there fear? I think that's just an interesting thing to articulate, because there could be so many things. It could be the way you look. It could be who sees you. It could be, it could be so many things to just, unpack and see it for what it is. Speaking of Paula Ivy, one of the things that she talks about is exposure therapy, right? And that's a psychological term, isn't it? And it's like, you just expose yourself more to you, like take those photos. Maybe even if you don't always publish them, like just, have that exposure. And the other note that I put here is the path of least resistance. So, I mean, the question is how to start marketing yourself when you're afraid to be visible. There are many ways to be visible. So, going back to the content assets, like creating a blog post, that is a way of being visible. You could create that, have the potential for being discoverable, and you could share, the link to that and the feature image, and that's a way of being visible. So, I always like to think of the path of least resistance. For some people it is writing first, for some people it is speaking first, or like the verbal thing. So going with that, I think, along with all the other stuff we've shared, is key.
Yeah, I love that path of least resistance. I think that's key. And everyone does have a strength in a different area. And you're right, being visible doesn't have to involve you at all in that way, right? You can write an article for, I don't know, like Mind Body Green or something, have that published and share that somewhere. You can write blogs, you can put out videos that are beautiful scenery, or you videoing something in your garden, or, and then with a voiceover. That doesn't
That's a lovely
be...
way to do it, because I just think the voice transmits so much as well. I think it can be more powerful than the visual at times, because don't you think you just pick up so much energy, vibrational content from the voice,
Oh yeah.
You know straight away whether you like that voice or you don't like that voice, because of whatever has been transmitted through that voice. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's so true. And you can, either be able to listen to a person's accent or not as well, right? There's a lot that goes with it. There's the energy of the person, the authenticity of them. You can feel so much of who they are through their voice, but also sometimes you can't understand a word they say when they speak out loud, but you read their writing and go, oh yeah, I know who this person is. And then hear them speak and go, wait, what? I didn't know you were British. You have these moments where you just think you've known a person all this time, and suddenly you discover this thing that was really obvious if you'd actually known them. So the voice is a really beautiful way to let people know who you are.
And a podcast, that could be. I mean, I just suddenly created a podcast recently. And
suddenly, how do you suddenly create a podcast?
Well, that's the thing. It's just like I just worked out how to do it. I thought it was going to have to be this big thing, and I'd have to do a course. And in the way I went about it is, I started creating these videos, and I'm like, oh, that's right. It was intended to be sort of like a series, the Diary of a Quiet Marketer. And then I remember one morning, it was a Sunday morning, I'm like, that's right. You can change a playlist into a YouTube podcast. So I did that. And then I was like, oh, well, how can I get now the podcast over to, say, like Spotify? And that was the next thing I worked out. And so suddenly it was all happening.
So you could just link it all through, and you didn't have to do anything other than link it all through?
Oh, well, I had to, I think they're called syndicate services. I signed up with a place called Podbean.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't super, like I thought that I could just bring in the YouTube video and then they would, you know, send the audio to, you know, wherever, but it didn't quite work like that. I actually had to I had to turn the video into an audio file.
Okay.
But it's a pretty simple process now.
Yeah, and Podbean's one of the that uploads it to everywhere, right? Puts it in podcasts everywhere. Just like there's Acast and Bcast. Well, I've done all the research, you see, to hear that you can just launch a podcast. I'm like, damn it, I've been trying to launch a podcast for about a year now. It's all
I'm going to send you after we finish this. There's a little episode I did is something about how I started a podcast this weekend or something. And it's actually one of my highest viewed things. And the thing is, podcasts are one of those things that are a channel for discoverability. Now, I have not yet had someone say they found me that way, but I know it's coming. You know, it will happen. And it will be just interesting to see how this goes, because I never expected Kindle, for example, to bring me so many people, and that is a pretty big channel. And I look forward to my first, I found you from your podcast.
Yeah, you'll get it for sure, because I still have people saying, oh, I found you from a podcast interview you did on someone else's podcast.
Yeah. Right.
They book in with me, and it might have been 5 years ago that I did that interview, because the podcast's always live.
Yeah.
It's like today when they listen to it and they're like, oh, awesome, I found you, great. You know, it's just like, oh, I'd forgotten I'd even done that podcast interview. So they will, but it's a long-term plan, that one. It's a really good long-term marketing plan, because it stays current unless you take it down.
It just lives on and on and on, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does. So I'm excited. I'll have to go and find your podcast and start listening. So I haven't seen that you had that. So, it's really cool. But yes, definitely send me that.
I've been very quiet about that. Probably too quiet, Emma.
Your marketing has been incredibly quiet about your podcast.
But in a way, it's one of these things where I just sort of did it for me in a way. But yeah, I need to sort of have a system that I let people know about it. Right. I think we're on to the grand finale, isn't it?
Yeah, the last question. So during transitional periods like menopause, when your energy is directed inwards and you feel less inclined to be visible, how can you continue to market your business and, oops, it got cut off there. How can you continue to, hang on, I've got it here.
And attract, you got it?
True, and attract clients, that's right, while staying true to where your energy is at that time.
Right. What do you think I'm going to say? What do you think I'm going to say?
Discoverable?
We become discoverable. That's number one, but I do love this question. Now, in order to be discoverable, you know, there's a process. There's my preferred process is market research, flows into messaging, flows into content building, and then you actually publish and become discoverable. But in terms of menopause, it's interesting. In my own journey, I feel like I've been really preparing for menopause since I was like 35, just mentally, because I came across this brochure from a doctor. I don't know if she may have been maybe a psychologist or a whatever. Anyway, she called herself a doctor. She was a doctor. And it really, I read this brochure and it gave me a really clear message that get your emotional house in order. She didn't write it like that, but you know, get things in order if you want to have a good transition. And I believe I've had a really good transition. In fact, did you know menopause actually goes for 1 day? So I've actually just crossed over into 12 months. So I'm actually officially like medically postmenopausal.
Oh, wow.
And
congratulations.
I've been meaning to share about this actually. So it's been in my mind. I've done various things to prepare emotionally, physically, and business-wise. The things that have really supported my journey is becoming discoverable, and is having the suite of tiny courses that I've built, which has meant that I can have, you know, passive leveraged income coming in, and it's felt really supportive, and it's meant that I haven't needed to rely on one-on-one sessions. And yeah, so that's also something that I would recommend that build towards.
I love that. And, you know, having just finally completed, I've bought several of your tiny courses. I finally completed one, not because it was long, mind you, but because one of those things where you just, you know, I bought it, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. But it's going to be a huge thing to get through because courses are really big, right? In my mind, this is going to be a really big, I need to set aside lots of time to devote to this. Of course, I hadn't been in the tiny course mindset. And you sent me an email back after I'd been chatting with you, and you'd said, you probably got to watch all the videos in under an hour. I'm like, what? Really? I've been thinking I need to set aside like a week for this.
Yeah.
And I did. I was actually unwell in bed a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to sit and I'm going to watch these videos, and I'm going to sit and journal on this because it's just a nice creative outlet for me to do that. It doesn't feel like work, right?
Yeah.
To brainstorm a course and to sit in that creative space and follow all of your prompts. And it did. I could watch all of without stopping and doing all of the activities or having soup and sleep, which is what I was doing lots of as well. You know, that took a bit longer, but actually watching the videos, it was less than an hour's worth of videos.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because there was light on in content. It was exactly what you need and no more, which was so refreshing. And to be able to create. And yeah, I got the bones of my tiny course that I'm now just need to record the videos for, and then put out in the world and link it to some content assets, link it to some blogs and some videos, and put it in a variety of places where people can just go there and learn and sign up for it. And so like, it's an absolute revelation to see a course that's so neat and easy and digestible. And I love that these are passive income streams for you in that. And I'm curious because I've always thought of a passive income stream as never really being truly passive, right? You have to promote it. You have to be out in social media talking about it. You have to have launch periods. You have to go through all of that. But do you do any of that with your tiny courses?
So for the most part, I have changed the setup of like I've actually, as we currently speak, all of the tiny courses have been pulled down.
Oh.
So they're not on demand. But they have been. So since 2020, they basically started selling on their own, but due to discoverability. So a lot of people were finding my blog about human design generators. And then that was sort of the blog that made me go, wow, so many people are coming to this blog, that I eventually created something for it to go to. But that started as essentially a really effective funnel. Like people were coming in through that course. And then once they did that, they went, I'm going to do that and that and that. So they would actually start buying the other courses without any prompting from me. But then, you know, other channels have come in terms of discoverability, and people might start at different points along the way. So I very rarely actually promoted them. But of course, with what you say with passive, like it's probably in any case more correct to say leveraged, because especially with the way that I'm going now, for various reasons, I have found that it's important to have some live component and some interaction with me. And so that therefore they're not going to be totally passive, but certainly leveraged. So yeah, but the key to selling my courses has been essentially blogs and videos. A lot of people find me through,
I love that. I love that it's your blogs and your videos direct people to a place where they actually spend money and buy your course without having to interact with you, without having to have a private conversation with you or a sales call with you, without having to have discovery calls, just to be able to get someone through your door. The price is there, the offer is there. It's just a simple sales pages, and it's an easy way to purchase. And it feels very calming to be able to sit and make a decision like that from the user end, which I deeply appreciate. I'm all for visible pricing as well. I've tried everything in a decade plus that I've been doing online business, and I didn't like having to spring a price on somebody to tell
price
them how much
reveal.
Price reveal. That's right. And I was thinking like, well, I can get over that, and I can be the person that's got that confidence, but I won't get on a call with someone unless I know how much something is, because I don't feel like someone's going to pressure me into something I can't afford, or have to have a conversation of, I can't afford that, right? I just don't have the money to spend on that right now, because I didn't expect it to be $800,000. I would rather know up front and make a decision. And I'm that person who has gone to an auction, heard the price, liked the car, bought the car, and then driven it away. Like I'm that, I make a decision and I act on it quite fast. But I just like to know how far I like it all to be upfront. And so I love that you've got that as a part of your ethos as well. And I know that that's not encouraged in standard marketing practice and in standard sales practice. So but that tiny course concept and creating things that have that passive income, that's actually, like you say, that leveraged passive income, or that passive income, but it's marketed through your existing things. You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel and launching and talking about it to get it to actually sell. You just keep creating content that keeps directing towards it. But it's your old content keeps directing towards it too. And if that's still gold, people are still going to find it, and they're still going to go there. And they're still going to link through and buy the thing. Which I think is great. I think that's so good, because that's true evergreen content. And so are you putting your tiny courses back up, or they're just being refreshed?
So the way I'm going to do it now is they're going to be in cohorts. So, and I really love, I almost think, why didn't I do this before? So there'll be, with most of the courses, there'll be 2 levels of support. There'll be just basically the course with the opportunity to ask questions that will get answered in a weekly audio for get the words out, throughout the duration of the container. And then there'll be a sort of a done with you, more like a closer contact with me option. And I really like it. So there's actually a lot of reasons that feed into this. One is that I've implemented some sort of gamification into my courses to inspire people to actually follow through, and that's working really nicely. The other consideration, which is a whole other can of worms, is sales tax. If something is purely digital, if it doesn't require any human interaction, then it gets classed a particular way as a digital product, and therefore you must have a process for collecting sales tax internationally, basically. A lot of people aren't on top of this yet, and I would prefer not to be a tax collector. I really hate collecting money that is not mine, that I need to go, oh, there's that money I thought I had, I'll see ya, So with this new version of Create a Tiny Course, it's going to be positioned a bit differently, to have cohorts and containers, and how do you design that container for the best, best for you, best for the people, and some of those sales tax considerations as well.
I love that you're playing with the different ideas too. Like, you do it one way and then you're like, I want to change it because this bit's not feeling right. And you're not afraid to just play with it a different way and change it and do something different. We so get stuck in it has to be this way because that's the way that worked. And I think, the market changes, people change, the way people are spending change, everything changes. It's in a constant state of change. And I think it's okay for us to be in a constant state of change with our businesses as well, right?
It's been a lot like that the last few years, and I wonder whether it will, I don't know, because I keep thinking, oh, this is it. This is it. And then I'm like, oh, no, it's not. That doesn't feel real good. So let's tweak it again. But
But maybe that's because
it's what? Because
you're evolving as well, right?
Yeah. And I guess because sometimes it feels a little bit like, oh, I'm changing it again. I've said I'm doing it like this and whatever. But at the same time, I know when people see me experimenting, it's permission giving. They're like, well, if Dani can say she's this and try that and go, you know what, that didn't actually work, I'm going to do it like this, then I can too. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a little different for you because everything is a little bit of an example that you're setting as well in the way that you run your business, because you're selling business related offers, and it's related to marketing, it's related to sales, doing things like instead of having an opt-in to a newsletter, you say, if you're looking for an opt-in for a newsletter, you won't find one because that's not how I do business. You'll find here, if you want that, here's my courses, it's a lesson. Just trying to find the freebie opt-in on your website is a lesson in how to do business differently. It's an example. Everything you do becomes an example for those who are following you and learning from you as well. And so it's totally okay for you to do things differently because it allows us to go, how is this feeling wrong for me right now? How can I change it and make it different? And I think that's really good. Whereas if I'm doing something different in the way I put out my offers, I generally don't tell everybody because it's not what I'm selling, right?
Yeah.
So I just play with it and just change it up. If I change my sales tax thing in the back end, I just change my sales tax thing in the back end. Like I don't, I play with things and change things all the time. It's all in a constant state of change. And I have no problems with that now. I used to keep it really rigid because it was the way I was told it worked. And it did work, but only when I first did it. And so now I'm a lot more flexible with that.
Yeah.
Are there any final words that you would like to finish up with?
There's a couple of quick things. Quickly wanted to mention that, the story I shared about, I took the newsletter. Well, you couldn't sign up and you needed to buy a course. I don't know if you've heard this before, but I guess your people wouldn't have. The month after I did that, my course sales doubled. The month after that, they tripled. So what is that actually saying? It's saying people are still coming to my site. They couldn't do the free thing. So they're like, well, I want to do something. So, okay, I'll buy the course, So they got what they needed earlier, perhaps, than, they would have. So that was an unexpected benefit. I didn't know if it would be, in fact, I was actually going, this is probably not a good business decision to take to slow down the growing of my list, but it ended up being good. The other thing I just thought to mention as well, just a little final closing note in terms of human design generators and my experience, especially in relation to, tiny courses and any offerings. There is a whole body of work I've created around, it's currently called the Art of Responding, but I've been working on a new body, it'll probably be embedded, called the Responding Sequence. So there's actually about 8 steps that are important to go through to be like a masterful responder. So there is certainly a depth to this, but what I want to say is like a surface level thing is when I started creating offerings in response. In fact, I didn't even do this consciously. What happened is I looked back at all of the offerings that had done really well, compared to the ones that didn't go well, and I sort of reverse engineered how did that start? How did I come up with that idea? And then I realized, shit, all the ones that had done well had been done in response. And so then I was able to sort of document what happened and apply the same principles consciously. And then I started to get the same results. But the bottom line was the offerings that I initiated, basically they were just all my own idea. It wasn't anything to do with anyone else. It was just like what I wanted to do and what I wanted to teach, and they're the ones that didn't go very well. The ones that were in response to conversations I'd had, to clients, to things that I saw being talked about, to things that I got asked about, they always went well, and they were often the things that like when I was first asked about, I noticed I was getting asked about tiny courses, you know, because I was making them. And I remember having this thought, why don't you just buy one of my tiny courses? Like, why are you asking me about a tiny course? Why don't you just buy one? But really, they wanted to know, how are you making them, right? And then I was like, I don't know if I've got anything to say about this. And then the moment I said that, I'm like, oh, I'd say this and I'd say this. So that whole thing was done in response, and it's been one of my best-selling courses ever. So anything that was in response was like that. The other thing I just wanted to mention in terms of Camilla, I noticed that she was a manifestor. And, you know, there's a lot of nuance to that as well. But one of the favorite things that I have said to manifestors that they find so helpful is, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. You've probably heard that term. Have you heard that term, that saying? Yeah. And so that, for me, that's for manifestors, right? Because often what manifestors are doing is they're kind of sort of maybe have an idea, or that, you know, they want to do something, but they're sort of waiting. Is it okay? They're trying to be in response. They're sort of, you know, like this. Meanwhile, generators are going, you know, they've been the manifestors. They're going to, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this. So it's funny how that happens. But so for Camilla and anyone else who's a manifestor, it's like, what do you want to tell people? Like, what do you just wish they knew? Like, what do you want to go, guys, here, we're going this way. Like, what is that thing? Don't try and be in response. Just, yeah, don't ask for permission. Just go, just do it, basically.
Just do it first and see what happens later.
Yeah, one of the things that manifestors are meant to do, which I find like, oh God, but they think this is really cool, is throwing spaghetti at the wall is a typical thing that's said, and see what sticks. And I think of that and I'm like, oh boy. I mean, yeah, I probably do a lot of, maybe I'm just thinking I experiment, but somehow the idea of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks isn't very exciting. But when I've shared that with other manifestors, they love it. They love the idea. I'm like, great, good for you. Go and throw spaghetti at the wall. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So
That's
that works
all
for the
me.
manifestors, but not for the others.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know there's some difference between responding and waiting for the invitation, but they're actually relatively similar when I've heard you talk about the two of them, right? There's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's overlap in terms of, like, one of my clients put this quite well, because I used to always talk about leaning back and how really, like, she must have heard me say this in relation to generators, but I think it's good in general. But leaning back, observing, you know, seeing what's coming into your field. And I remember saying, well, Dani, if generators are leaning back, projectors are lying down. And and I thought, that's freaking perfect. I love that. So, you know, what we have in common is the element of waiting, and you know, I think the best thing that projectors can do is, because you're not going to get an invitation or be acknowledged if you're not saying anything. So I think sharing what they're seeing, sharing their perspective, sharing, you know, just not to individuals, because you know, people don't like that, and that's what projectors tend to want to do, or not. They can do is give unsolicited advice to individuals. But if you can say what you're seeing in general, like in the industry, in the collect, you know, like that can be received well. It gives individuals an opportunity to receive that. So sharing how you think, I think, is really important for projectors. Yeah. And of course, the big difference is probably the energy levels, in terms of, you know, the generators have that access to life force energy and the projectors don't. So that's where it gets kind of quite different. But in terms of strategy, there are a lot of similarities, yeah, I think.
Right. And reflectors, I don't know much about reflectors.
Because they're so rare, I don't know. I don't either. I've had a few reflectors in, but yeah, I don't really have any. I mean, apart from knowing that they've got to wait a lunar cycle to make those big decisions, yeah, so that they can really, they're sort of like gathering perspectives and whatnot through the whole cycle. And what's their other, their other role is to really, sort of reflect. I think it's important for them to share what they're seeing as well, because they're reflecting the collective like vibe or something. So I'm not as up on their strategy. In fact, I think the manifestor strategy and the reflector is probably the easiest in a way. I don't know. Like I feel like what I've said about manifestors, that's all I have to say. I can't imagine creating a course around that, whereas I think that it's for the projectors and generators, there's a lot more kind of explaining or deconditioning or I don't know, something,
Yeah, I agree that deconditioning, because waiting to respond isn't what you're normally taught in business.
Or life.
Yeah, or life. That's right. Waiting for an invitation is also not what you're taught. It's certainly not what you do in networking, where you're made to, you're put on the spot, you go out there talking to people and you got to, it's no wonder that doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
But that, it doesn't come naturally, I think, in the way that we've been socialized. So I think it's really good to be able to work, or at least play within those recommendations and see what works. Like you were saying, looking back and reverse engineering your courses that did well and figuring out what it was, realizing you were actually responding with the ones that did well. And certainly when I look back on some of the courses I've created, the ones that were the least successful were the ones that I thought people needed. That may have been like a buddy course to another course. I'll put this out as well because I really need this part too, but no one asked for it. And did it sell? No, it did not. Right. And so looking back, maybe it was because I didn't actually get invited to produce that course. Most of my course ideas organically, naturally come from somebody saying, oh, I'd really love you to teach me about this. Or we're in a session and there's an area I really need to go into lots of detail about. And I find myself doing it with 3 or 4 different clients. And then I go, right, I need to create a course about this so that I can say, just go over here and watch this content.
And that still aligns with your strategy. Like I see that for the projectors, there's 3 types of invitations. There's like the direct, which is, could you please do this? Like that's direct. There's I call a standing invitation, which means in the past, what have you been asked to speak about? What have what have you spoken on podcasts about? What have you, like looking back, what are those things that people have wanted your input on? I call that sort of a standing invitation. And then there's a felt, which is basically like you can kind of see an opening here, imagine, you've got a group of people and they're all talking about the same thing, or like, let's just say a struggle, and you're observing that, and there could be an opening there. Or you can see, actually there's
That's a felt invitation.
So it's like, it's not direct, but yes, because it was actually one of someone I was working with who was a projector that she communicated this, and at first I was a bit like, I don't know about that, but she's the projector, so like I can't as a generator go, no, you're wrong, but I over time I've and I've included it in one of my in my projector training. It's like, there can be like a felt sense that there's an opening here that you can step into. And I guess in the stepping into that, it's like that, you know, instead of like just storming in, like, hey, I've got it, you know, you almost ask, you know, invite, or what's the word? You know, there's a way of asking people if they're open to like receiving whatever it is that you have, or, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which then creates the invitation if they say, yes, I'm open to receiving it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or then
Well,
if you see an opening, it's like, then that could be, you could write a piece of content that speaks to that, you know, like you can use it that way as well. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I've found content that I write like that into something that's, you know, something that's come up, that's happened. If I write content directly about something, not about a particular person, because I try not to shine a light on people like that. But I find that usually gets loads of traction. There's lots of interaction about heaps, but people will share it. People will put it out. It will sometimes be some of my most engaged with posts have been those that have been in response to collective stuff. Or response to something I'm witnessing a lot of between individuals and share. And that's been, you know, and just sharing my insights on it.
Yeah. And that's like the total role of the projector, really.
So I do get it right sometimes. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's really good. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know we've got quite a range within our practitioner membership. We've got quite a range of different human designs. So I know that they're all going to get something out of the way that you work and the way that you encourage people to explore doing business quietly and doing marketing quietly. There's going to be, you know, life-changing for many of them who've thought there is only one way. I keep saying there's other ways, but because there's so many people doing it one way, it's hard to feel like it's okay that you have permission to break away from that.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving people that permission.
Yeah.
I think it's a very valuable role that you play.
Yeah. I was just thinking that, maybe my mission is to just like, you know, introduce so many, however many people to this whole, just to get them to think differently. Because sometimes it's like, it's hard to believe that people can't think differently. But, you know, I've got to remember I was there too. But, you know, there's certain conversations, even around the conversation around direct messaging, that I don't use that. People are like, but you know, they have a meltdown. Like, what? But what about when people want to ask you about your offers? I'm like, they can go to my website. What if they have questions? Well, it's on the sales page. Yes. And if they really need to ask me, I guess they could email me, you know. But like, people have a total meltdown on that. Like, it doesn't compute.
I love that you have that boundary that you don't have to be accessible by private message, because that's something that I've found I've had to force myself to be okay with. But I don't really like having to private message over, you know, over an offer that's got all the information out there, but people just aren't going and clicking on the links. The amount of people that send me, the most common private message that I get sent is, do you do one-to-one work? And it's like, all you have to do is click on my FAQ. Oh, and the other one that used to be my most common, my original most common message was, are you a medical intuitive? And like, my branding at that point was Emma Turton Medical Intuitive. Literally, it was everywhere. And it was my Facebook name. It was everywhere. Emma Turton Medical Intuitive. Are you a medical intuitive? Like, fucking duh. What do you reckon? It's written everywhere. It's all I talk about. So
does that still happen?
Not so much about, are you a medical intuitive, but I always get, do you do one-to-one work? Do you still see clients one-to-one? So all you have to do is look at my FAQ, and it's my automated message if you send my business page a message, but I don't have any automated messages on my personal messages. So people will send it to me on my personal profile. Do you still see people one-to-one? Yes, I do. Go to my website. Go check it out. Like, here's the link. Oh, no, I didn't know it cost that much. It's like, well, you know, now I've had this whole big back and forward about your entire health history. I've spent the last hour going to and fro with you, and you were never going to book in for it anyway. Just go to my website, look at it, and decide whether it's for you, and then ask me about whether or not you want to book in.
Yeah.
I love people, but sometimes people are strange.
Yeah. But you could turn it off. You could turn it
I
off.
didn't. Well, see, I still have it as, but then I could probably use Voxer. It's still a part of my offers, like, for
Right. Yeah.
doing courses.
Yeah.
I never thought it. Can you turn it off? Can you turn your
Okay,
private
so on my Facebook page, I've been able to entirely, completely. As I said, I don't use my personal. Sometimes I get people just sending me friend requests, but I don't accept them on my personal page. On Instagram, you actually can't turn it totally off, but the sort of the loophole is that I only accept messages from people that I follow. So if they follow me, fine. If they won't be able to get, their message won't get through to me. If I shouldn't laugh about it, but I kind of wonder what's happening on the other end, because I think that changes over time. It used to say something like, Danielle doesn't accept private messages. That was like Instagram's standard thing. But then I believe that went away. So I'm not quite sure what's there now. So
what I've noticed is on Instagram, there's several folders for messages, and there's like message requests. So a lot of them go into a message requests folder, and that's where you get all the weird spammy stuff. But sometimes you get, you ask, someone says, comment this for a recipe, and you ask for the recipe, and it goes into message requests. So you have to kind of go fishing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people have that. Is it ManyChat or something? It's one of those things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
One word, and it automatically sends word.
And I think a lot of marketing is training people to not go and look, for information, to not click on the link, to just have everything given to them, and, to make it a no-brainer. So,
make it a brainer. I love it.
When you make it a brainer, like you spend way less time on answering like messages that are, Yeah,
that's so true. And that is one of the things I love about Instagram, is that you have the click through to the link. The link can go to all of the things that you might have talked about or be selling. It can link through to your website. They can get all that information there if they just take a couple of clicks through. They'll get a response from that much quicker than if they private message you.
Yeah.
Right? So, well, they won't get a response from you at all if they private message you, but if they private message me, they'll get it much later. By the time I get back to that message, because I'm busy, it'll be a lot later. They'll get an instant response if they just click through and read the stuff. I've set it up quite well. You can just read it all on my website. So it's an interesting thing, that people are far more likely to send a message than do any research. But whether or not they're at all likely to purchase based on sending a message, I think the correlation's probably.
That's why I turned it off. I just had people going, "Can you tell me about your offers?" And I'm like, seriously? I already don't want to work with you. If you couldn't click through to my website, it's already a no from me. So, but the other thing I thought was interesting is that when I first did it, I had a few people say that ended up working with me. They said the fact that I tried to message you and I couldn't was really like shocking, surprising. That I went to your website and it basically made them want to work with me. They're like, I want that for my business. And they're like, you are totally right. When I started writing about it, they're like, you're totally right. I couldn't message you, so I had to go to your site and I bought the course. Job done.
I love that. I love that. Because people just waste time with all of the, private messages, or going on a newsletter, or trying to get to know you for 6 months in a Facebook group. There's a lot of time wasting that happens when you've already made a decision they want to work with you at the beginning. Why not take a decent action on that enables them to do that? I love that. And I love that you're giving permission to everybody who watches this, that it's okay to switch off your private message, to not be available 24/7 or at all. Even if you don't want to be available at all, you don't have to be.
I'm going to give you a blog that you can share with this. The blog's called Why I Don't Use DMs for My Business, or something like that. So that might be helpful. But there was another blog that something came up in our conversation. Can't remember what it was about. Anyway, when I have a look through Why I Don't Use the newsletter. or why I don't use a lead magnet. Oh, I think it was something about,
Yes.
Anyway, I'll have a
And it
look.
was a podcast about how to create a podcast.
Oh, yeah. Podcasts, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you. You've been so generous with your time today. I really appreciate you giving of your brain to us, your wisdom
You're
to us,
welcome.
and your experience with doing business differently and doing business in alignment with what feels right and good for you. It's very refreshing. Even just looking at your Instagram profile is very refreshing. Looking at your website is very refreshing. And I encourage everyone who watches this to go and find you in all of the places, because it's a beautiful lesson in how you can do things differently. Not because you necessarily have to copy what Dani does, or what I do, or what anyone else does, but just to give yourself permission to know it's totally okay to break outside of whatever business mold you've created in your mind and create business in a way that feels really good for you, and to play with it, break it, change, do whatever you want with it and make it yours.
Be a mad scientist is what I like to say. See yourself as that. Yeah.
Be a mad scientist. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Dani. I so appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Today. It's been amazing. I've learned so much. I've got heaps of notes.
Yes.
So thank you.
Right.
And I'm sure there may be some questions that come up after this. If there are any questions, they could probably get bounced in your inbox. Is that? No, I'm just kidding.
Just DM me. Just DM me.
I love it. If there are any questions, can I let you know? Perhaps by email.
Yeah. Why don't you just collect any questions and then you get back to me. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I love it. I love that no one can even message you there to say, I watched the thing. I have a question. But they don't need to. If they want to go and check out what your offers are, they can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A lot in your blogs and videos, because you put so much out. It's really beautiful, free content, ungated content.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks for watching, everyone. And bye for now.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Let me know if you do have any questions, and let me know what you change. I'm really curious to see, once you've watched this video, what you go out and shift. What's your to-do list, having watched this video? Because I came away from reading Dani's book with a really short, sweet, but very powerful to-do list of things that were radically different to how I've done them. So I invite you to share that with me in the membership group as well, because I'm really excited to see what you go, oh my God, this is a dawning realization. I'm going to change this and it feels so good. I would love to know what those things are, because I think it's going to be life-changing and breathe a breath of fresh air through your business. Yeah, so thank you so much, Dani. Cool. Thank you to all those who've watched. And I will see you, no doubt, in the next training. Bye now.